Being schizoid often means that memory works in quite a different way for us than it does for people who are neurotypical or have standard ways of forming and processing memories. One particular thing that influences this is the fact that we live in our heads and we're primarily anchored to our inner world. And so this means that we have quite a subjective way of viewing the world, and we view the world through our own personal lens. And this lens is often going to be linked to an abstract way of viewing situations. So instead of recalling the actual events that happen in a linear fashion or in a concrete fashion, we might encode events more in terms of the meaning, what something symbolized, or the impression that a situation had on us. So this means that we can have a very personalized form of memory that isn't necessarily going to correlate with the shared experience of the group, where other people are more anchored in the physical goings on and less viewing it in an abstract or symbolic way. With schizoid individuals, we have a different perception of time. So we think in a non-linear way. So this means that sometimes, even though we're there in the moment, our minds are processing from outside of the moment. And this means that as things are going on in real time, we can see it, we can perceive it, but the encoding process is sometimes going on a parallel path. A lot of people who have full emotional access and don't have detachment from their emotions tend to encode events emotionally. So in social situations and group settings, they're more likely to encode things because it had shared social meaning, because of the emotions that it brought up, or the emotions that they think about after the event that was linked to the event can help to reinforce that memory. And with schizoid individuals, because we don't primarily focus or function on emotions, this means that emotional satisfaction isn't necessarily going to be a motivation for experience, and isn't necessarily going to enable us to encode things in the same way that other people do. There's a misconception that with schizoid individuals that we don't remember things because we're dysfunctional. But it's not that we don't remember things, it's that we tend to remember different things than other people might remember. So we might remember something in a way of what the deeper underlying meaning of that situation was. We might encode it in a way that it reinforces a prior idea that we have or doesn't fit in with our ideologies. We may record it in a way that we may have found it contradictory or illogical, or we might encode it in a way that we found the situation made sense and it fit. So it's not necessarily just looking at a situation as it is, but abstracting from the situation. And so our memory can be quite abstract. Some people have described this as fragmented. And because they describe it as fragmented, it can be seen as negative, like we're not forming like whole memories, or that there's something dysfunctional about the way our memories are formed. However, for us, this is how we're patterned, and this isn't something that is wrong with us, but it makes sense to us to function in this way, so that things that aren't important to us, like what color a t-shirt somebody was wearing at a party, or some piece of small talk that such and such is getting married next week or something like that. Now, those things could be important depending on the context. I'm not saying that categorically they're not important, but often the sensory details are going to be discarded unless they have some greater meaning or fit into our mind in some sort of a way that reinforces like our perception of the world, or just basically just holds like meaning for us. It can also influence like the situations that we choose to be part of. For example, like when you know that certain memories aren't going to be remembered, if you engage in certain social situations and that it's not going to be meaningful, this can influence motivation to engage in experiences in the first place. It's not just a matter of having a lack of motivation. It's like, why is there a lack of motivation? And when there's a lack of meaning, then there can be a lack of motivation as well. So what's significant to most people in society, because of their emotional desire to encode things and because of their shared social perspective, isn't necessarily going to be something that draws us in. Or when we engage in experiences that other people regard to be significant and remember, we might not remember those things because we don't regard them to be important or significant to us. And it's not to be disrespectful to the status quo or how people do things. It's just literally how our mind is wired to process memories. In some ways, it could be seen like people could perceive us as having a bad memory for not remembering the things that they remember. However, the memories that we have formed are often impressions that they haven't formed. So it's just a different way of encoding information and a different way, perhaps also, of retrieving it. For what reason was that memory formed? For what reason does it need to be retrieved? Versus being stored and retrieved on an emotional basis. The point I'm trying to make through this video is that it's not always straightforward to say that we don't remember things because they were traumatic or bad, or we don't remember things because we don't care, or we don't remember things because we have a fragmented memory and there's something wrong with that. It's just a different way of remembering, and for a different purpose. So there's a lot that can be lost to us in terms of sensory details or emotional relevance, but there's also a lot that can be gained in terms of the depth of thought, the significance, the symbolic meaning, the relating it to other ideas or a broader construct and forming a bigger picture. Because when you narrow in on the details, that can be quite constricting. By being outside of the box, not adhere to the group norms, it's possible to see the world through a way and through memory encode the world in a way that other people don't. And this can lead to some very unique thought constructs. I think I made the point that schizoid memory can be very unique in the slant that we take, the subjective angle, the relevance to us. We're all different. We're going to remember things for different reasons. The way that situations impress on our memory. And really, there's nothing wrong with that. And so, if a lot of details do escape us, it may just be because those details didn't really matter, one way or another.